Following the betrayal of Hugh Hammer and Ulf the White at the First Battle of Tumbleton, the Dance of the Dragons enters its bloodiest and final phase. Season 4 has a huge number of events to cover. I'm not sure how they'll manage to fit them all in, and they'll probably end up skipping half of them. But in this video, I'll explain everything in detail. When news of Tumbleton reaches King's Landing, panic grips the Black Council. Fearful that the remaining dragon seeds, like Nettles, a lowborn bastard girl who claimed the wild dragon sheep stealer by feeding it sheep daily, a character cut from the show, with elements of her storyline merged into Baela Targaryen, Rhaenyra Targaryen yields to the urges of Sir Luther Largent, who was not killed in the books as in the show, and Lord Bartimos Celtigar, whose book role in Rhaenyra's council was largely given to Torrhen Manderly in the show, ordering the immediate arrest of Adam of Hull and Nettles. Lord Corlys Velaryon strongly defends Adam's loyalty. Defying his queen, Corlys secretly sends word to the Dragon Pit, making Adam mount sea smoke and flee the city before the Gold Cloaks can seize him. When Rhaenyra discovers the escape, she strips Corlys of his office as Hand of the King and throws him into the dungeons beneath the Red Keep. The imprisonment of Corlys fractures Rhaenyra's regime. The Velaryon fleet, the core of Rhaenyra's naval power, abandons her cause. Hundreds of Velaryon soldiers desert or refuse to obey orders, leaving the capital severely undermanned. Tensions in King's Landing reach a boiling point with the death of Queen Rhaenyra Targaryen, who threw herself to her death from the windows of Maegor's Holdfast, impaling herself on the iron spikes below. Driven mad by grief over the brutal murder of her young son Jaehaerys during Blood and Cheese, her depression was further deepened because rumors claim that Rhaenyra intended to force her into sell her to a brothel. Rumors spread through the city that Rhaenyra ordered the murder of Helaena. Already suffering under devastating famine and extortionate taxes imposed by Bartimos Celtigar, the common folk snap, as they loved Queen Helaena deeply for her gentleness and innocence. A crazed, one-handed street preacher known as the Shepherd begins preaching in Cobbler's Square. He declares that the dragons are demonic beasts responsible for the realm's suffering, and calls on the small folk to cleanse the city of Targaryen blood. That night, full-scale riots break out across King's Landing. City watch posts are overrun, Lord Bartimos Celtigar is seized and tortured to death by the mob, and Sir Luther Largent is killed in a clash at the Fish Market Gate. While King's Landing collapses, Prince Daemon Targaryen operates from Harrenhal alongside the dragon seed Nettles. Receiving Rhaenyra's decree ordering Nettles' execution for high treason, Daemon ignores the order. Instead, he sends Nettles and her dragon, Sheep Stealer, away into the Mountains of the Moon, ensuring her survival. Daemon then instructs Lord Manfred Mooton's garrison to send word to Prince Aemon Targaryen, though in some accounts, Alice Rivers used her dark visions to foresee Daemon waiting at Harrenhal and warned Aemon to face him. Daemon remains alone at Harrenhal for 13 days, carving a notch into the heart tree for every day that passes. On the 14th day, Aemon arrives riding Vhagar, accompanied by his pregnant lover, Alice Rivers. The two dragon riders take to the sky over the God's Eye. Caraxes and Vhagar clash high above the waters. Caraxes latches onto Vhagar's neck with his jaws, while Vhagar's talons rip open Caraxes' belly. As both monstrous beasts plunge toward the lake, Daemon unchains himself from his saddle, leaps from Caraxes onto Vhagar, and drives his Valyrian steel sword, Dark Sister, straight through Aemon's blind eye socket. All four crash into the lake at high speed. Neither rider nor dragon survives the impact, though persistent rumors and tales spread among the small folk, claiming Daemon survived the fall and secretly spent his remaining years with Nettles. In King's Landing, the Shepherd leads an armed mob of tens of thousands to the Hill of Rhaenys to slaughter the dragons housed within the Dragon Pit: Shrykos, Morgul, Tyraxes, and Dreamfire. The small folk breach the heavy oak and iron doors through sheer numbers. Shrykos and Morgul are killed in their lower chambers by axes, spears, and heavy hammers. Tyraxes strangles in his own chains while fighting off rioters. Dreamfire breaks her iron chains and flies into the soaring stone dome overhead, roasting hundreds of attackers with dragonfire. As the mob continues to rain missiles on her, the wounded dragon violently strikes the high stone vaulting, causing the entire stone dome to collapse inward, crushing Dreamfire and thousands of rioters beneath hundreds of tons of masonry. Watching the destruction from the Red Keep, Prince Joffrey Velaryon, Rhaenyra's eldest surviving son, desperately leaps onto Rhaenyra's Rhaenyra's dragon, Syrax, without a saddle or whip, intending to fly to the pit and save his dragon, Tyraxes. Mid-air, Syrax twists violently to throw the unfamiliar rider. Joffrey slips from her back and falls hundreds of feet, dying on the cobblestones of Flea Bottom. Syrax then descends into the ruins near the dragon pit, fighting on foot rather than taking to the air, and is eventually slain by the mob. With 4 of her children dead, though the third was Prince Viserys, whom she mistakenly believed dead after his kidnapping during the Battle of the Gullet, her dragons destroyed, and her army vanished, Rhaenyra flees King's Landing in the dead of night through the Dragon Gate, accompanied only by her eldest surviving son, Prince Aegon the Younger, Sir Harold Westerling, and a minimal escort. She sells her royal crown to a Braavosi captain to purchase passage for her remaining followers, traveling overland to Duskendale and eventually taking a ship back to Dragonstone, believing the island remains her secure stronghold. Following Rhaenyra's flight, King's Landing falls into complete lawlessness during a brief period known as the Moon of the Three Kings. With no ruler on the Iron Throne, 3 different pretenders seize control of different parts of the city. The Shepherd holds the ruins of the Dragon Pit and the surrounding streets with his religious mob. Meanwhile, a hedge knight named Sir Perkin the Flea crowns his squire, a boy named Trystane Truefire, claiming he is an illegitimate son of King Viserys I. Lastly, a Lysene courtesan named Sylvanette crowns her 4-year-old son, Gaiman Palehair, claiming he is the bastard son of King Aegon II, and begins issuing popular decrees like freeing slaves and feeding the poor. Meanwhile, at Tumbleton, the Green Army under Lord Ormond Hightower's successor, Lord Unwin Peake, stammers due to internal division. Hugh Hammer openly declares his intent to crown himself king, while Ulf the White demands Highgarden for helping the Greens by betraying Rhaenyra. Determined to prove the loyalty of House Valerian and wipe away the stain of Dragonseed treason, Adam of Hull rallies a fresh black force of 4,000 Riverlords led by Benjicott Blackwood, Black Aly Blackwood, Lady Sabitha Frey, and Kermit Tully. Adam of Hull launches a night attack on the Green camp at Tumbleton. In the confusion, Sir John Roxton corners Hugh Hammer as he prepares to mount his dragon and guts him with his Valyrian steel sword, Orphanmaker. Adam leaps onto Seasmoke and engages Vermithor and Silverwing. Seasmoke and Vermithor lock in a fatal duel on the ground. Adam of Hull perishes as Vermithor tears Seasmoke apart, but Vermithor also collapses and dies of his wounds shortly after. Prince Daeron Targaryen, who was sleeping in his tent when the attack began, died during the chaos of the battle. Accounts differ on whether he was killed by black soldiers, crushed under a burning tent, or slain by a man who did not recognize him. Ulf the White slumbers through the battle. The next morning, he is poisoned with arbor red wine by Sir Hobart Hightower. Though the Black Army loses Adam of Hull, the entire Green Dragon threat at Tumbleton is eliminated. Without Rhaenyra knowing, King Aegon II Targaryen had secretly returned to Dragonstone weeks prior. After escaping King's Landing in disguise aboard a fishing skiff, Aegon II hid on Dragonstone. His injured dragon, Sunfire, had crawled across the Crownlands, killed and devoured the wild dragon Grey Ghost, and rejoined Aegon II on the island. Aegon II then won over disgruntled members of Rhaenyra's army, led by Sir Alfred Broom, to betray her. When Princess Baela Targaryen tried to defend the island, she mounted her dragon, Moondancer, and fought Aegon II on Sunfire in the skies above Dragonstone. Moondancer blinded Sunfire before being mortally wounded. Aegon II jumped from his saddle as the dragons crashed to the earth, breaking both of his legs. Baela survived the crash and was captured. Aegon II initially planned to execute her, but stopped when advised that holding her hostage was more useful against her father Daemon and grandfather Corlys. When Rhaenyra lands at Dragonstone in late 130 AC, Sir Alfred Broom slays her Kingsguard escort and arrests her. Aegon II presents Rhaenyra to his half-dead dragon, Sunfire, inside the courtyard of Dragonstone. Sunfire bathes her in fire and devours her in 6 bites, leaving only her left leg below the knee. Aegon the Younger is forced to watch his mother's execution. Aegon II returns to King's Landing in 131 AC aboard a Valerian ship, secured after Lord Corlys Valerian's supporters made peace terms with Aegon II to secure the release and restoration of Lord Corlys, occupying a devastated capital and systematically ending the Moon of the Three Kings. Upon his return, Aegon II's forces retake the city and crush the 3 rival factions. Aegon II pardons young Gaiman Palehair due to his age and takes him in as a ward, but orders orders the execution of his mother, Sylvanette. Trystane Truefire is captured and executed, though Aegon II knighted him before his death as a final mock favor. The shepherd is arrested, subjected to brutal torture by Larys Strong, and ultimately burned alive at the stake alongside hundreds of his religious followers in the cobblestone square. However, the war is far from over. Lord Kermit Tully, Benjicott Blackwood, and Black Aly assemble a fresh Riverland host. Simultaneously, Lord Cregan Stark marches down the causeway with a massive northern force of 10,000 men. Lord Boros Baratheon of Storm's End, who had held back his troops during most of the war, marches north to protect Aegon II's regime. He meets the Riverlord army led by Kermit Tully at the Battle of the King's Road. The Riverlord forces encircle the Stormlanders, and young Benjicott Blackwood breaks the Stormlander flank. Lord Boros Baratheon slays Lord Rolland Darklyn and Sir Adrian Redfort before being confronted by Kermit Tully, who kills Boros in single combat. The last Greenfield army is wiped out, leaving the path to King's Landing wide open. With the Riverlords 2 days' march away and Cregan Stark close behind, Aegon II refuses Lord Corlys Valerian's counsel to surrender or yield to the Night's Watch. Instead, the king orders his remaining servants to cut off his nephew Aegon the Younger's ear as a warning to the Blacks. Shortly after entering his royal litter, Aegon II is found dead with blood on his lips, poisoned by a cup of sweet arbor wine prepared by conspirators within his own court by Lord Corlys Valerian, Lord Larys Strong, and Sir Perkin the Flea. Lord Cregan Stark arrives in King's Landing shortly after the murder. Disgusted by the dishonorable assassination of a king, Cregan assumes the office of Hand of the King for 6 days, a period known as the Hour of the Wolf. Cregan arrests 22 men implicated in Aegon II's murder, including Larys Strong and Corlys Valerian. Larys Strong and Sir Giles Belgrave choose execution. Cregan personally beheads them with ice. Corlys Valerian is spared through the diplomatic intervention of Black Aly Blackwood, whom Cregan agrees to marry. Cregan executes swift court administration, resigns as Hand after 6 days, and returns north, leaving his old soldiers behind to integrate into Westeros. To reconcile the remaining loyalists of both factions, 11-year-old Aegon III Targaryen is crowned king and married to 6-year-old Princess Jaehaera Targaryen, merging the Black and Green line.